Under the falling hush of snow, the world seemed less a land of men than a dream that had forgotten to wake. A horse labored through the drifts, its breath turning silver in the twilight, carrying a girl who did not belong to this silence. Her name was Ayana. Only 20 years in the world, yet her eyes carried centuries of sorrow and endurance. She clutched the reins as though the leather itself might anchor her to some certainty, though every hoofstep took her further from the life she had been told would be hers. Behind her lay the tribe that had given her away. Before her stood a ranch gate carved with initials she did not recognize. She whispered a prayer to the cold sky, wondering if she had mistaken her path, if fate itself was mocking her with cruel misdirection. And when she lifted her hand to knock at the door, her heart trembled as though she were trespassing into someone else's story. The door opened not quickly but with the reluctant groan of timber and used to company. A man stood framed in lamplight, broad-shouldered, his hair dark as charred wood, his face marked by both handsome lines and shadows of solitude. This was Cole Maddox, a rancher of 30 years who bore his wealth like a burden rather than a crown. The sight of her startled him, yet he said nothing at first. Ayana lowered her gaze, speaking in a voice that shook like thin ice. She told him she had been sent here by mistake, meant for another ranch, another man's claim. The shame in her tone was sharper than the cold, and she almost turned to leave, to vanish into the storm that had delivered her. But Cole, though silence had long been his truest companion, could not bring himself to close the door. He did not welcome her, but he did not send her away either. His hand lingered in the air, caught between refusal and acceptance, as though the choice were not his to make at all. Inside, the fire glowed in his hearth, but he did not lead her there. Instead, he walked her to the barn, where warmth was drawn not from flame but from living breath, the horses shifting in their stalls, the straw carrying the scent of summer long gone. He lit a lantern, the light catching dust motes like drifting stars, and laid a quilt upon the hay. Ayana sat with the poise of someone who had been taught to endure humiliation without protest, her back straight, her eyes steady though her heart curled inward. Cole watched her from a distance, feeling both the weight of his duty and the ache of his loneliness. He left her milk in a tin cup, then stood awkwardly in the shadows as though unsure if kindness might be mistaken for something more dangerous. She thanked him softly, though the words seemed too small to carry the gratitude and the sting of her wounded pride. And when he left her there, he thought it would end. Yet as the night deepened he returned, draping his own coat over her sleeping form before retreating again into the silence that had long been his refuge. By morning the world had changed. The storm had risen in the night, thick drifts hemming in the ranch until the road vanished under a white oblivion. Ayana woke to find the barn's timbers groaning under snow, her path forward sealed. Cole told her the truth without flourish. She would not be leaving until the storm relented. She nodded without protest, though inside, despair carved deep. She had been given away once, and now even the earth conspired to refuse her passage. In town, she imagined, tongues would already wag, about the native bride misplaced, about the lonely rancher who harbored her. Whispers had always been sharper than knives, and she feared how easily shame could be spun into a story she could not escape. Cole knew those whispers too well. Years ago, his betrothed had fled, leaving behind not only a man but a mark upon his name. Since then, silence had been his only defense against the cruelty of neighbors who pitted his wealth but mocked his solitude. The storm forced them together. Day by day they shared the labors of survival. They chopped wood, their breaths clouding in unison. They baked coarse bread over the fire, passing bowls between them in wordless rhythm. Each evening, they sat near the hearth, saying little yet speaking through glances and the faint brush of proximity. Cole found himself watching the way she braided her hair, how her hands lingered over the horses as if even beasts could sense her gentleness. Ayana felt the weight of his gaze, steady yet unspoken, and wondered if such quiet attention was more dangerous than open declaration. It was not passion that unsettled her but the patience in him, the way he seemed to wait for something neither could yet name. She began to ask herself, was this only survival, or the root of something that might outlast the snow? Yet both bore their own prisons of duty and fear. Ayana remembered she was not meant for him, that another man had been promised her. She told herself her heart must remain untouched, lest she betray the role her people had forced upon her. Cole, too, resisted, haunted by the thought that to reach for her would be to steal from another, to claim what was never offered. So they built their bond not in words but in gestures small and fragile. He teaching her to mend a worn saddle, she leaving a braid of wildflowers on his windowsill. Each act both an offering and a retreat, as if love might grow quietly in the soil of restraint. And always there lingered the question, Was affection unspoken still real, or did silence strip it of meaning? One night the silence nearly broke. As they worked side by side in the barn, her hand brushed his when they reached for the same bucket. For an instant, her breath caught and his chest tightened, but Cole withdrew into shadow, fear sharper than desire. He turned away, his face hidden, and Ayanna wondered if she had misread everything. Yet even in that retreat, something unshaken remained, a thread between them, invisible but impossible to sever. She lay awake that night, staring at the beams above her, asking the dark if love was a theft or a gift misplaced. And in the main house, Cole stared at the fire, whispering words he had never meant to be heard, that perhaps God, in his strange cruelty, had meant for her to come here after all. The storm finally broke, and with it came news carried by a rider braving the thawing trails. He brought word from the man meant to be her husband, that he refused to claim her, that the bargain was broken. The rejection struck deeper than any snowbound exile. Ayanna wept in the barn, her body bent over straw as though the earth itself might absorb her grief. All her life she had borne the weight of being chosen without choice, and now even that had been stripped away. She was not bride, not daughter, not belonging to anyone at all. Cole found her there, trembling and small, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to kneel. No longer a rancher guarding his pride, but a man laid bare by the sight of another's sorrow. He reached out, his hand steady, and whispered words that seemed too sacred for the air. God finally sent you to us. It was not only to him he spoke, but to the land, to the silence, to the lonely house that had long yearned for more than walls and echoes. The barn itself seemed to hold its breath, the horses stilled, the world listening. Ayanna lifted her face, her tears shining like snowmelt, and though she did not answer with speech, she placed her hand into his. It was not a vow, not yet, but it was the surrender of despair to possibility. In that fragile clasp, the story that had begun with a mistake grew into something the world could neither predict nor undo. Winter yielded slowly, but the thaw was steady. The drifts shrank, revealing soil eager for seed, and life crept back into the ranch like music long silenced. Ayanna did not leave. Each day she walked beside Cole in the fields, laughter beginning to return in small, careful notes. Their bond remained quiet, defined not by declarations but by acts, her tending the foals, his placing coffee by her side each morning. Love had grown not as a blaze but as a hearth fire, steady, enduring. And when the first wildflowers pushed through the melting snow, they stood together watching, knowing that what began in error had become their truth. And if you, reader, have ever felt cast aside, remember this: the wrong road may yet lead to the right door. Love does not always thunder its arrival. Sometimes it waits, whispering in barns, in storms, in silences that ache until they are answered. Do not fear if you find yourself misplaced. Often it is in the wrong turning that we are guided exactly where we were meant to belong.